Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel and spending some of your day with me. And it's getting ready to get in the gym here for my workout. Wanted to do the video real quick because today, guys, I want to talk about the one bass fishing technique, not only the technique but the area that works on every lake in the country. It doesn't matter if you're in Florida, California, Missouri, New York, whatever. You're going to catch fish doing this technique in this type of area. So we're going to get into that in today's episode. Also, guys, so we're getting started, a couple quick things. Just a quick invitation to hit that subscribe button here at Intuitive Angling. Right now we just got like 30% of the people that are subscribed to our channel that watch the videos, so that's a good way to support the channel. And also, guys, anyone interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, you can do that by going to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler. Just shoot me a private message and get you all the details for that, so really appreciate that. Okay, somebody's working on cutting something over here on the parking lot. I hope they don't get that skill saw going again. Okay, here's what it is, guys, and we've talked about this structure before, but I want to go into it a little bit more detail today as far as the seasonality of it. The number one technique, and this is like, it seems basic, it seems simple. A lot of people say, well, I already know that, Randy. There's a lot more to it than what you think you know about it, is fishing riprap. Guys, I have caught bass off riprap on any lake I've ever been to that has riprap. Doesn't matter if it's January, August, it doesn't matter where it's at. Riprap is, in my opinion, probably the most consistent bass producer of any structure out there. But there's a lot to it. There's a lot of variables that determine the technique that you want to fish on it. And that's why a lot of people overlook riprap, because they see a section of riprap and some people say, well, man, I'm not going to fish that riprap. I've already seen 2 or 3 boats go down it. It's obvious, it gets a lot of pressure. It's like a lot of people have this sort of love-hate relationship with it. Some people like to fish it, some people don't. But guys, I can tell you right now, I never pass it up. I don't care what technique or what pattern I'm on, there's always quality fish to be caught on it. And I want to give you guys some tips and advice on how to approach it and what techniques to use on riprap. That is what maximizes it. Now, the first thing about riprap fishing, guys, that you got to remember is you have to make a commitment to it, and it's all about timing a little bit. Bass use riprap all day long and all night long. It's a great place for them to live. It's a great place for them to feed. Depending upon how the riprap is set up, sometimes it's under a bridge underpass, so you have current moving through there. There's different grades of slope to it. Every riprap is set up different, but the thing that ties this common thread in is to that uniform large rock that's on there. And that uniform large rock is great habitat for prey, any type of smaller fish. It's like perch live there, crawdads live there, shad live there, minnows live there. There's algae on the rocks. It's a great ecosystem for the food chain to begin at, and that's why the bass are always there. So here's some things that you need to remember about it as far as the technique that you want to use on riprap. Riprap, like anything else that I talk about, the technique that you use on riprap all depends on the water clarity. Water clarity determines riprap. And given that, before we get into the techniques, I just want to say one thing about riprap. The difference between somebody that fishes riprap and doesn't do very good versus people that make checks and tournaments off of riprap or wins tournaments or whatever is your commitment to that riprap. Because here's the thing about it. It's like, say you got a long stretch of riprap and you make one pass down this riprap bank and you catch one bass. And people say, well, man, there's just not many fish on there. I just didn't catch one. That's the difference between one person and the other person that will turn right around and make another pass down that riprap with a different technique. They may catch one more bass. So they've got 2. Maybe it took them 2 hours to catch 2 bass, but they got 2 bass in the well. Then they turn around and make another pass down there with another technique or another casting angle or another presentation or another speed or retrieve or another depth on the riprap, and then they catch 2 or 3 more on the next pass. And so you've been there for 3 or 4 hours. Now you've got 5 or 6 fish in the boat, or maybe more. Why somebody else pulls up there and they hit the sweet spot. They hit the end of a riprap. Maybe there's a little point on a riprap. They hit that and they move on. They don't catch one. If you're going to catch bass on a riprap, and I hate to give away the secret because this is like one of my secrets in fishing, you have got to say, I'm going to fish this riprap most of the day, and I'm going to figure out the technique and the depth and everything that the fish are going to use on this riprap. So here is the advice I'm going to give you. You have to divide your water clarities up into like 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot, and clearer. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the clear, then we'll work down into the little bit more stained water areas of riprap. Clear water riprap is probably the least productive as far as if there's one type of riprap that is not quite as good as anything else, it would be riprap in clear water. So if you have a riprap bank in clear water with where that water visibility is say over 4 or 5 foot, it's very situational as far as the timing you have to be there. Unless the water temperature is cold, like in the winter time of the year, anytime that water temperature is like over 55 degrees or something like that, you're going to have to be on that riprap during low light conditions or at night. Those fish on that clear water riprap will feed and move shallow at night. And then some of them are still there, you know, early in the morning when it's low light or on a rainy day. So clear water riprap, it's all about those fish moving up temporarily to be caught on that area. So some of my favorite techniques on a clear water riprap would be obviously a topwater lure if it's warm enough. A jerk bait can be really good, a little swim bait, possibly something like a wiggle ward in colder water like that. But the only time I really fish that, unless it's the winter time, would be under those low light conditions. In the winter time, if it's really cold, you know, I may back off with like a little finesse jig or something like that, and I can still catch some. Very, very situational. But when you start to get water visibilities under 3 feet, so let's say for that water visibility of like 2 to 4 foot in that zone, that opens up more of a possibility of techniques. So 2 to 4 foot water visibility on riprap is pretty common for a lot of it. But there again, in that 2 to 4 foot zone, it's still, you got some pretty good clarity, and therefore you still have to concentrate on that lower light time of year or the lower light situation. It's always going to be better. You know, clouds, rain, lower light, wind is going to be key on there. Shade on the riprap is going to be key. Once you lose that shade, and if that water temperature again is over about 50, 55 degrees, it's probably going to be a little bit tougher. If you're fishing when that riprap is 2 to 4 foot visibility, it opens up a few more techniques besides, you know, the top waters and the jerk baits and little swim baits. Now you're starting to get into an area where more of a diversity of crankbaits could work under certain conditions. Jerk baits a little bit shallower could be good. Maybe slow rolling the spinner bait can be good out a little bit deeper off that riprap. 2 to 4 foot zone, probably the best lure for a jerk or for a riprap during those conditions most of the time is a jerk bait or a crankbait. It's going to be really, really good with that. And again, a little finesse jig can always be good. So you sort of have to match your lure and your presentation and the depth you fish on the riprap specifically to the water clarity that you have. If you've got 2 foot of clarity, you can pretty much count that those bass on that riprap are going to be in less than 6 or 7 foot of water. If you got closer to 3 foot of visibility, those fish on that riprap could be down to 10 foot of water or so. Now, my favorite riprap clarity is water visibility under 2 feet. I love to fish riprap in dirtier water conditions. If you gave me a perfect scenario for riprap fishing, I would want about a foot of visibility. When you have a foot of visibility on riprap, it puts more bass on riprap. It puts bass shallower on riprap, and it puts bass more aggressive on riprap that bite during a wider range of conditions. You don't have those specific light intensity windows quite as much. If you've got dirty water or a foot of visibility, you can catch bass on riprap all day long. You know, I don't care what time of year it is. And obviously the number one bait is a crankbait. A crankbait, you cannot beat it. There's a lot of different crankbaits that'll work on a riprap like that. Anything from a big square bill to a little bitty crankbait to a lipless crankbait. You just really have to figure out day in and day out, you know, what they want. And a lot of the baits that they prefer on a riprap and dirty water has to do with how much wind is hitting that particular bank. It doesn't really have to do as much with the clouds, but the wind has a big part of it. And what I have found is the more wind that is hitting a riprap, the larger your lure needs to be. And vice versa, the less wind, the smaller the bait. So let's say, for example, it's calm, there's no wind, and you got 10 inches of visibility. That's when a little bitty crankbait's going to work good. Or maybe, pitching and flipping a tube up on the bank, or a small spinnerbait. If the wind's hitting it pretty hard, like say you got a 10 or 15 mile an hour wind coming in on that riprap, then something bigger, like a bigger 3-inch square bill crankbait could be good. Larger spinnerbait, maybe pitching a full-size jig. So let your wind dictate the lure size with that. And there's always going to be sweet spots on a riprap. It's like any type of irregular feature, like a little cut, an indentation, a little point, underneath a bridge where it turns, those are always going to be high percentage areas. But the key to catching bass on riprap that other people don't catch is catching them on just those straight sections that don't have any unique feature to it. Just a straight riprap bank that nothing stands out, because those are the areas that a lot of people don't fish as much, and they get overlooked, and people sort of slop through them a little bit. But anyway, guys, I could talk on and on about the riprap. I don't want this video to last forever, but main thing, guys, is just make a commitment to it. Use your ingenuity and your creativity on the techniques, and you can catch lots of fish, and you can catch big fish. Probably some of the biggest bags of fish I have ever seen in my life have come off riprap banks at certain times of the year. It's just a great place to catch fish. So hope it helps out. We'll talk later.